The small spacecraft shook as it cut through the thick atmosphere of Kepler 442b. Rain hammered against the windshield, and lightning cracked across a sky that looked bruised and angry. Inside the cockpit, Lisa gripped the controls tight, her hands trembling not from fear of the storm, but from what she carried in the cargo hold below. Her mother was dying. Lisa had been flying for 3 days straight. She'd left the Draconic Empire's capital world in secret, without telling anyone where she was going. If the council found out, she'd face punishment. But they'd already given up on her mother, and Lisa wasn't ready to let that happen. Not yet. Not while there was still one person left to try. The planet below was nothing like home. Where the Empire's worlds were gleaming and perfect, with towers that touched the clouds, Kepler 442b was rough and wild. Humans lived here. Just humans. No advanced alien species, no grand technology, just ordinary beings doing ordinary work. Most dragons from the Empire wouldn't even look at a place like this. But Lisa had nowhere else to turn. She brought the ship down through the clouds, using the coordinates she'd found in an old database. The landing strip was made of cracked concrete, not the smooth crystalline surfaces of proper spaceports. As she touched down and the engines powered down, Lisa sat in the sudden silence and let herself cry for just a moment. Then she wiped her eyes and went to check on her mother. Stella lay on the medical platform in the cargo hold, wrapped in blankets that glowed with soft blue light. The old dragon looked smaller than Lisa remembered. Her scales, which had once been brilliant white with hints of silver, were now dull and pale, almost gray in some places. Her breathing was shallow. The machines hooked up to her body, expensive technology from the Empire's best medical centers, beeped quietly. One by one they were failing. The doctors had explained that Stella's body was rejecting them, that her ancient genes didn't match with modern medicine, that there was nothing more they could do. Lisa touched her mother's scaled forehead gently. It was cold. Too cold. "Hold on, Mom," Lisa whispered. "Just hold on a little longer." She grabbed her jacket and stepped out into the rain. The settlement was small and quiet. Shops lined a main street that was nothing fancy, just concrete and metal buildings with simple signs. Lisa walked with her head down, trying to blend in, trying not to draw attention. The rain soaked through her clothes. A few humans passed by, paying her no notice. They were used to visitors from off-world, she supposed. This was a border town after all. A place where rules were loose and desperate people came looking for answers. The repair shop was exactly where the database said it would be. The sign above the door was faded and simple: "Jack's Repair Service. We fix everything." The windows were smeared with dirt and grease. Through the glass, Lisa could see the inside was cluttered with spare parts, old machinery, and pieces of things she couldn't identify. It wasn't impressive. It looked like the kind of place the Empire would forget existed. Lisa pushed open the door. The shop smelled like oil and metal and something else, something warm, almost human. Tools lay scattered on workbenches. Holographic displays flickered with repair diagrams. And there, buried under the open hood of what looked like a spacecraft engine, was a man. A human man. His hands were covered in grease and he was humming some kind of tune while he worked. At the sound of the door opening, he looked up. His face was weathered and lined. His hair was starting to gray at the temples. His eyes were sharp and intelligent, but there was something else in them too, something kind. He didn't look like a genius. He didn't look like he could do the impossible. He just looked like a regular person who fixed things for a living. Lisa's heart sank a little. What had she been thinking coming here? But then Jack straightened up and looked at her properly. He saw her wet clothes, her desperate expression, the way she was barely holding herself together. And without saying a word, he seemed to understand that this wasn't a regular repair job. "Help," Lisa said simply, her translator device crackling as it converted her words into human English. Her voice sounded small and broken, even to her own ears. Jack wiped his hands on a rag, smearing grease across his jeans. He looked at Lisa for a long moment, studying her face like he was trying to read a story written there. Then he nodded slowly. "Yeah," he said, his voice calm and steady. "Yeah, I'll help you. But first, you need to tell me what's wrong. And don't leave anything out." Lisa felt something break open inside her chest. Maybe it was the first real hope she'd felt in weeks. Without another word, she turned and headed back toward her ship to bring her mother inside, finally believing that maybe, just maybe, there was still a chance. For 2 days straight, Jack did almost nothing. He didn't open up Stella's medical panels. He didn't run diagnostics or pull up the technical specifications the Empire had sent with her. He didn't do any of the things Lisa expected a real mechanic to do. Instead, he just sat. He watched. He listened. Lisa paced around the shop, her anxiety growing with each passing hour. She'd left the capital in secret. She'd taken her mother across the galaxy to this forgotten corner of space. And now this human was just sitting there, watching her mother sleep. Sometimes he'd get up and walk over to Stella, place his hand on her side, and feel the slow rise and fall of her breathing. Sometimes he'd close his eyes like he was listening to something Lisa couldn't hear. On the first night, Lisa finally couldn't take it anymore. "What are you doing?" she demanded. "You're not even trying to fix her. The Empire's doctors said we don't have much time left. Every minute we waste." Jack looked up at her calmly. "I'm not wasting time. I'm learning." "Learning what?" Lisa's voice came out sharp and frustrated. "You should be looking at her implants. You should be running scans. You should be doing something." Jack set down his coffee cup, the old-fashioned kind that humans used, with steam rising from the dark liquid inside. "Come here," he said quietly. "Sit with me for a minute." Lisa wanted to argue, but something in his voice made her stop. She walked over and sat down next to him, close to where Stella lay on the medical platform. Jack pointed to the old dragon's chest, where it rose and fell with each breath. "You see that?" he asked. "That rhythm. That pattern. Your mother's been breathing like that for what, 100 years? Maybe more?" 137, Lisa said quietly. "Right. 137 years. Her body knows how to do this. It knows how to breathe, how to move, how to be alive. But those fancy machines the Empire attached to her, they don't care about that. They're trying to force her body into a pattern that makes sense to someone in a lab. Not to her." Lisa frowned. "But the machines are supposed to help her. They're healing technology. Are they?" Jack leaned back and looked at her directly. "Or are they just keeping her on life support while her real body slowly gives up the fight?" The words hit Lisa like a punch. She'd never thought about it that way before. The Empire's doctors had always talked about the machines as if they were the solution. Fix the machine, fix the patient. It was simple. It was logical. It was the way everything worked. But looking at her mother now, seeing how thin she'd become, how the machines seemed to drain something from her rather than give her strength, Lisa realized she'd never actually questioned it. Jack continued, his voice gentle but firm. "I've been listening to her for 2 days. And you know what I noticed? Her heart rate goes up when she dreams. Her temperature drops slightly every time those cooling systems kick in, like her body is fighting them. Her breathing gets shallow when the oxygen feed activates, like she's resisting it. Your mother's not dying because she's broken. She's dying because she's tired of fighting. So what do we do?" Lisa asked, and for the first time hope flickered in her chest. "If the machines are hurting her, we take them off?" Jack shook his head. "No. We do something different. We stop fighting her body and start listening to it instead." He stood up and walked to one of his workbenches, pushing aside old parts and tools until he found a worn notebook. He flipped through pages filled with handwritten notes and sketches. "I fix a lot of things here on this planet," he said. "Spaceships, robots, life support systems. And I've learned something that the fancy engineers in the big cities forgot. The best machines aren't the ones that control everything. The best machines are the ones that work with what's already there." He showed her a sketch of a different kind of system. Not replacing Stella's biology but supporting it. Not forcing her into a pattern, but amplifying what she naturally wanted to do. "What if," Jack said slowly, "instead of machines that fight her body, we built machines that dance with it? Systems that boost her natural healing instead of fighting it? Technology that helps her do what she's always known how to do, survive, breathe, live." Lisa stared at the sketch. Then she looked at her mother's face, peaceful in sleep, and something shifted inside her. Every doctor, every technician in the Empire had asked the same question. What can we fix? What can we replace? What can we upgrade? But Jack had asked something completely different. He'd asked, what does she want to feel like again? No one had ever asked that. Not once in all the months of treatment. Lisa felt tears burning in her eyes, but this time they weren't tears of despair. They were something else entirely. They were the beginning of hope. The shop became Lisa's home for the next 3 weeks. She and Jack worked in a rhythm that somehow just made sense even though they barely spoke. Jack would wake up at dawn and start tinkering with the new systems he'd designed. Lisa would bring him coffee, she'd learned how he liked it, strong and hot, and then she'd sit close to her mother, monitoring Stella's vital signs, reading to her from old books, talking about memories from when Stella was young and strong and whole. The systems Jack built didn't look like anything Lisa had ever seen. They weren't sleek or perfect or covered in blinking lights like the Empire's technology. They were practical and honest. Wires ran along Stella's body like gentle veins, connected to devices that looked almost organic in the way they curved and fit. Some of them hummed. Some of them were silent. None of them forced anything. Jack started by removing the cooling systems that had been making Stella uncomfortable. Then he built something different, a thermal regulation system that actually listened to what Stella's body needed. When she got too warm, it gently cooled her. When she got too cold, it warmed her up. Not forcing her into an artificial comfort zone, but working with her natural temperature rhythms. Next came the oxygen system. Instead of pumping oxygen into her at a fixed rate, Jack created something that responded to Stella's breathing patterns. When she breathed in deeply, it provided what she needed. When she breathed shallow, it supported her gently without overwhelming her system. It was like the technology was having a conversation with her body instead of arguing with it. "You're insane," said a visiting Xylothian engineer one afternoon. He'd come to the shop to fix a damaged probe and stayed to watch Jack work. "These systems are too simple. Too unpredictable. What if something goes wrong?" Jack didn't even look up from what he was doing. "Then we fix it. That's what I do." The Xylothian shook his head in disgust and left. But Jack just kept working. Lisa watched her mother carefully during these first weeks. Stella's breathing, which had been shallow and labored, began to deepen. The color started to return to her scales, not the brilliant white they'd been in her youth, but a soft, pearly glow. The machines that had seemed to drain her energy now seemed to give her something back. One night, after 2 weeks of constant work, Jack finally sat down to rest. He pulled up a chair next to Stella's medical platform and just sat there, exhausted. Lisa brought him fresh coffee and a sandwich. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the gentle hum of the new systems working. "I had a daughter," Jack said suddenly, his voice quiet. "Her name was Rebecca. She would have been 42 years old now if she was still alive." Lisa didn't know what to say, so she just listened. "She got sick when she was 12, Jack continued, staring at nothing. "Rare disease. The doctors wanted to put her on all these machines, all these treatments. And they might have worked, technically. But Rebecca was scared. She didn't want to be treated like a broken thing that needed fixing. She just wanted to feel like herself again." He paused, and Lisa could see the pain in his eyes, old but still real. "So I talked to her," Jack said. "Every single day. I listened to what she wanted. What would make her feel normal. We didn't fight the disease with machines. We just made her comfortable. And you know what? Her last weeks were happy. She felt like herself. She felt loved." Jack looked at Stella, then really looked at her. "Rebecca taught me that sometimes the most advanced thing you can do is just care. Not about fixing everything. Just about making someone feel like they're worth caring about." He reached out and gently touched Stella's scaled forehead, just like Lisa had done the first day they met. "You're worth caring about, old girl," he whispered. And then something incredible happened. Stella's eyes fluttered open. They'd been closed for 3 days straight. She lifted her head slightly, and from deep in her throat came a sound, a low rumbling purr that seemed to vibrate through the entire shop. It wasn't words. It was something deeper. It was recognition. It was the sound of a creature who understood she was being seen. Really seen. Lisa's hands flew to her mouth. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Jack smiled. A real smile, the first genuine one Lisa had seen from him. "That's it, girl," he said. "That's what we're going for. That right there." Over the next week, Stella's transformation accelerated. Her scales caught the light now when she moved. Her breathing became strong and steady. Young engineers from nearby settlements started stopping by the shop, curious about what Jack was doing. When they saw Stella, saw how alive she'd become, they couldn't believe the simple systems Jack had built could do so much. "You're not following any of the accepted protocols," one of them said, confused. Jack just shrugged. "Protocols are for when you don't care enough to listen." I cared. So I listened. The sun hadn't risen yet when Jack woke Lisa up. "It's time," he said simply, and something in his voice made her understand that this was the moment they'd been working toward for 3 weeks straight. Lisa followed him to the main work area where Stella lay, surrounded by Jack's unconventional systems. Everything was ready. All the new technology was in place. All the connections had been tested. All the safeguards were set. But nobody knew if it would actually work. Lisa stood at her mother's side and took her scaled hand. It was warm now, warmer than it had been in months. She could feel the pulse beneath Stella's skin, strong and steady. Jack positioned himself at the control panel he'd built, a simple collection of buttons and switches that looked like something from an ancient Earth spacecraft, nothing like the holographic interfaces the Empire used. "Last chance to stop," Jack said, looking at Lisa. I believe this will work. I think your mother is strong enough now that her body will accept these systems. But I can't guarantee it. Nothing in life comes with a guarantee. Lisa looked at her mother's face, peaceful, hopeful, alive in a way she hadn't been in so long. Do it, Lisa said. Jack nodded and reached for the first switch. The systems powered up one by one. Soft lights began to glow along Stella's body, following the paths of the new technology Jack had built. The humming grew louder, then settled into a gentle rhythm. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Lisa's heart started to pound. What if it didn't work? What if they'd come all this way for nothing? Then Stella's eyes began to open. Not slowly like they had before. Not the tired, barely conscious opening of recent days. Her eyes opened wide and bright, and they were clear. For the first time in months, there was recognition in them. There was presence. There was life. Stella's scales began to glow. It started as a faint shimmer, like moonlight on water. Then it grew brighter, a soft, pearl-white luminescence that filled the entire shop with gentle light. The glow didn't hurt to look at, it was beautiful and warm and alive. Lisa gasped. She'd seen her mother's scales glow like this once, when she was just a child, before age and sickness had dulled the light. Stella lifted her massive head, and the movement was strong and sure. Her wings, which had been folded tight against her body for so long, unfurled slightly. They trembled with effort, but they moved. They moved. Then Stella opened her mouth and she spoke. I remember now. Her voice came out like distant thunder, like the rumble of the earth itself, like something ancient waking up after a long sleep. I remember what it feels like to live. The words hung in the air of the shop, and Lisa felt something break open inside her chest. Not in a painful way, but in the way a dam breaks and lets the water flow free. She cried. She didn't try to stop it. She just let the tears come while her mother looked at her with eyes that were truly awake for the first time in months. Jack stepped back from the control panel and approached Stella slowly, respectfully. He placed his hand on her neck, right where her scales were glowing brightest, and he didn't say anything. He didn't need to. His hand said everything: gratitude, respect, and the simple human connection that had made all of this possible. Stella turned her head to look at Jack and she rumbled. Not in pain or fear, but in something that sounded almost like laughter. Thank you, human, she said, her accent thick but her words clear. Thank you for seeing me. Not my illness. Not my failure. Me. Over the following days, something unexpected happened. Word spread through the settlement and beyond. Engineers from other species started arriving at Jack's shop. Some came out of curiosity. Some came because they'd heard rumors of a miracle. But most came because they'd never seen anything like what Jack had accomplished. Stella became a teacher. The old dragon, now strong enough to walk around the shop, would spend hours talking to the young engineers who came to learn. She explained how Jack's systems worked, but more importantly, she explained why they worked. She talked about the difference between technology that served life and technology that controlled it. She spoke about compassion and listening and care. For centuries, Stella told them one afternoon with a group of young Velosian engineers gathered around her, we've believed that advanced civilization means advanced machines. Bigger power, faster processing, more control. But we forgot something important. We forgot that the best technology is invisible. The best technology doesn't force. It helps. It listens. It cares. She looked at Jack, who was working quietly in the corner of his shop, fixing a broken probe for a customer. This human taught me that. And it's the most valuable lesson I've learned in 137 years. One of the young engineers raised his hand. But how do we learn to think like that? How do we learn to care about what we're fixing instead of just fixing it? Stella smiled, a real smile that showed her ancient teeth. You start by asking one simple question, she said. Not what is broken? But, who is this? What do they need? What would make them feel alive again? That's where real engineering begins. Outside the shop, the sun climbed higher in the sky, and in a small corner of the galaxy, everything was starting to change. The message came through official channels 2 weeks after Stella's awakening. A delegation from the Draconic Empire was arriving. Not a small group, but a full delegation: scientists, engineers, council members. They were coming to Jack's little repair shop on the frontier moon of Kepler 442b. They wanted answers. They wanted to know how a human mechanic, working with primitive tools and unconventional methods, had accomplished what the Empire's greatest minds could not. Lisa felt nervous about their arrival. Jack just kept working. On the day they came, the sky was clear and blue. 3 massive Imperial ships descended through the atmosphere, far too big for the small landing strip. They had to hover while sleek shuttles carried the delegation down to the planet's surface. Lisa watched from the shop window as they emerged, tall, elegant beings in formal robes decorated with symbols of rank and achievement. They looked like they'd stepped out of a museum, like they represented centuries of power and knowledge. Jack was under a table, fixing a moisture regulator for a human settler. He didn't even look up. The delegation filed into the shop, their eyes taking in the clutter, the old machines, the simple workbenches covered in grease and spare parts. They looked uncomfortable, like they'd stepped into something beneath them. The lead representative, a dragon with deep crimson scales, stepped forward. "I am Ambassador Vex Thrall," she said, her voice cold and formal. "We have come to understand your methods. The Empire wishes to replicate what you've done here. We want your technical specifications, your equipment designs, your protocols." Jack finally rolled out from under the table. He stood up, wiped his hands on his jeans, and looked directly at the ambassador. His shop was quiet except for the gentle hum of Stella's life support systems in the back room. "I don't have protocols," Jack said simply. "I don't have secret formulas or advanced techniques you can download and replicate." Vex Thrall's eyes narrowed. "Then how did you accomplish this? How did you save the dragon Stella when our best medical technology failed?" Jack gestured for them to follow him to the back of the shop where Stella rested. The old dragon lifted her head as they entered, her scales catching the light in that soft, pearl-white glow. She was still weak, recovery took time, but she was alive. More than alive. She was present. "I'll tell you exactly what I did," Jack said, and his voice was calm but firm. "I just remembered something you forgot. That the things we fix have feelings. That they matter. That listening is the most advanced technology there is." One of the younger engineers in the delegation stepped forward. "But that's not a solution. That's just philosophy." "Is it?" Jack asked. "Let me ask you something. When you were designing the systems that were keeping Stella alive, did anyone ever ask her what she wanted? Did anyone ever sit down and listen to her body, really listen to understand what it needed?" Silence. "I thought not," Jack continued. "You built machines based on data and specifications and what you thought would work. But you forgot to ask the patient. You forgot that technology is supposed to serve life, not control it." Stella spoke then, her voice filling the room. "This human sat with me for 2 days. He didn't do anything. He just listened. And in that listening he understood something your machines never could, that I didn't need to be fixed. I needed to be heard." Vex Thrall looked genuinely confused. "But how does that translate into a reproducible system? How does an entire empire implement listening as a medical protocol?" Jack smiled slightly. "You train your engineers differently. You teach them that the people they're helping matter. You teach them that a patient isn't a collection of broken parts. They're a person. And people deserve respect." He walked back to his workbench and picked up one of his simple devices. Nothing fancy, just wires and responsive sensors carefully woven together. "This looks primitive compared to your technology, right? But it works better because it's designed to work with Stella's body, not against it. Every engineer who comes here learns the same thing. The best solution isn't always the most complex one. Sometimes it's the most compassionate one." Over the following days the delegation didn't leave. They stayed in the settlement watching Jack work. They observed how he treated every being who came into his shop, with genuine interest and care. They saw how his customers didn't just come for repairs. They came because Jack actually saw them. He asked about their lives. He understood their problems. He built solutions that fit their needs, not solutions that fit his equipment. Lisa and Stella prepared to leave the planet 3 weeks later. The Empire had asked Stella to return as an ambassador, not to report back but to teach. To share what she'd learned about a new way of thinking about technology and life. On their last morning, Jack walked them to their ship. Lisa embraced him, and he held her like a father might hold a daughter. Stella bent her massive head down and touched her forehead to his, a gesture of deep respect among dragons. "You've changed everything," Stella said quietly. "No," Jack replied. "You did. I just reminded you what you already knew. That you were worth caring about." As their ship lifted off, Lisa watched the planet grow smaller below. Word was already spreading through the galaxy. The Draconic Empire had announced a new initiative, redesigning all their medical systems with a focus on compassion and patient care. Other species were starting to wonder if maybe, just maybe, humans had figured out something important. Not through advanced technology or dominating power, but through something simpler and more powerful: genuine care. Back on Kepler 442b, Jack returned to his repair shop. But something had changed. Now there was a line of beings waiting outside, not just for repairs but for something else. They came because word had spread. They came because they'd heard about a human who actually saw them, who listened to them, who treated them like they mattered. And in a galaxy that had been running on cold efficiency for centuries, that simple human quality, genuine care, turned out to be the most advanced technology of all.